I used to think affairs were the reason marriages ended. That cheating was the final blow, the unforgivable sin. But now I know the truth. It starts much earlier, much quieter. It starts when the eyes stop meeting across the dinner table, when the jokes get replaced by silence, when goodnight kisses become just part of the routine, and then one day, you realize you haven't really touched each other in weeks. You still live in the same house. You still share bills. You still talk about groceries and schedules. But the marriage? It's already gone. You just haven't signed the papers yet. My marriage didn't end with yelling, or cheating, or betrayal. It ended the way most do, with distance. Not the kind that comes from miles, but the kind that grows in inches. Slow, almost invisible, but deadly. We were fine. That's what I told myself. We didn't fight. We weren't screaming at each other. We weren't sleeping in separate rooms. But we also weren't laughing like we used to. We weren't holding hands on the couch. We weren't excited to see each other at the end of the day. And that's the danger. Because when things are fine, you stop paying attention. I remember one night, we were watching a movie. Same couch we'd shared for years. Her head was on one end, mine on the other. Halfway through, I looked over. She wasn't watching. She was scrolling. Blank face. Disconnected. I wanted to say something, but I didn't, because I didn't know what to say. And deep down, I wasn't sure I had the right anymore. So I turned back to the screen. And just like that, another moment passed us by. Disconnection doesn't scream. It whispers. It's her making dinner in silence. It's you choosing your phone over a conversation. It's both of you too tired to care, but too proud to admit you're drifting. And it adds up. Little by little, the warmth fades, the light dims, and you both become strangers living parallel lives under the same roof. She didn't leave all at once. That's what most people don't understand. She left piece by piece. Every time I dismissed her feelings, every time I rolled my eyes instead of listening, every time I said we're fine just to avoid a real talk, she left slowly, until one day. She was already gone long before she packed a bag. And I didn't even notice, because I was busy convincing myself we were okay. We used to laugh in the kitchen. Now we barely spoke at breakfast. We used to argue over music on road trips. Now we rode in silence. But I didn't see it as a problem. I saw it as peace. Because I grew up believing that no fighting meant everything was fine. What I didn't realize was that no fighting sometimes just means no one cares enough to fight anymore. The hardest part was, I really did love her. But love isn't enough. Not without effort. Not without presence. Not without showing up when it's uncomfortable. And I didn't. I avoided. I deflected. I stayed busy. I told myself I was providing. But what she really needed was someone who could sit with her pain without trying to fix it. I didn't know how, so I disappeared, even while sitting next to her. I wish I could tell you there was a moment, some dramatic scene where everything broke. But it wasn't like that. It was quiet, soft, almost polite. One day, she just asked if we could talk. We sat on the couch, same one from the movie night. And she said, I don't think we're okay. I wanted to say we were. I wanted to promise I'd try, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew she was right, and I had no idea how to bring us back. That night, I slept on the couch, not because she asked me to, but because it felt like the only place I belonged. I stared at the ceiling, thinking of all the small moments I'd ignored, all the times she reached out and I shrugged it off, all the times I could have said something but chose silence instead. Regret doesn't hit all at once. It shows up in echoes, in empty chairs, in cold sheets, in old photos that suddenly feel like fiction. We didn't break. We faded. And the scariest part? It could have been prevented. If I had just paid attention, if I had just asked, "Are you okay?" and actually listened. But I didn't, and now, I'm just a man sitting on a couch, replaying all the times I was too proud, too tired, too blind to see her slipping away. A few weeks later, she asked for space, not in anger, Not as a threat, just calmly, like someone who had already made peace with leaving. She said, "I can't do this anymore. I don't feel seen. I don't feel safe to open up. And I don't think you even notice that I'm slowly shutting down." And she was right. I hadn't noticed, or maybe I had, but didn't want to deal with it. So I stood there, quiet, numb, while the person I once promised to love forever walked away not with rage, but with a sadness too quiet to fight. The house didn't feel different right away, but I did. I found myself walking slower, staring longer, replaying our last few years like a broken film reel. And the silence, it used to be peaceful. Now it was heavy, like the absence of something that once breathed beside you. I started noticing everything I had ignored. Her side of the closet, empty. The little mug she used every morning, gone. The scent of her shampoo fading from the pillow. And that's when it hit me. She didn't leave me that day. She had been leaving for months, maybe years. And I had let her, because I thought not fighting meant we were okay. But all it really meant was that we'd both stopped trying. I remember one night, I sat in the living room, holding my phone, a thumb hovering over her name. Not to beg, not to blame, just to say, "I see it now." But I didn't send the message, because I didn't know if it would help or just reopen a wound she was already trying to heal. So I sat there, in the silence I had helped create, and finally asked myself what I had never dared to before. Where did I go? Not where she went. Not what she did. Not what we lost. Where did I go? When she needed me present, I started journaling. Something she used to beg me to try. I had always laughed it off. Now, it felt like the only way to untangle everything I had buried. I wrote about the early days, the way she'd leave sticky notes on the mirror, the inside jokes, the time we danced in the kitchen to no music, just because life felt light. And then I wrote about when it all changed. The long work hours, the avoidance, the pride, the excuses, the screens I chose instead of her voice. It was brutal, but it was honest, and honesty, I realized, was something I had owed her for years. People think love ends in one dramatic moment, but that's not how most marriages break. They break in the tiny moments when you stop paying attention, when you choose convenience over conversation, comfort over connection, silence over truth. And I had done that, over and over again. I thought I was being strong, holding things in, not making things worse. But in doing so, I became invisible in my own relationship, and so did she. I used to think being a good man meant providing, protecting, being steady, but she didn't need a soldier. She needed a witness, someone who could see her, not just look at her, someone who could hear what wasn't said, not just respond to what was. And I missed it, because no one ever taught me how to sit with emotions, mine or hers. They taught me to solve, to fix, to move on. So that's what I did, until she became something else to move past. But the truth is, you don't move past someone you didn't fully show up for. You carry them. In the quiet, in the guilt, in the lesson. One morning, I opened the drawer where her necklace used to be. It was empty. But for some reason, I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing and thinking, this is what absence looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just a small, silent drawer that used to hold something precious. And that's what our marriage had become. A space I didn't fill when I had the chance. That week, I started doing things differently, not to win her back, not to prove I had changed, but because I finally saw what she had seen all along. That connection is a daily choice, not a guarantee. And once it's gone, there is no guarantee it'll ever return. Some men wait until it's too late to ask the right questions. I was one of them. I used to think I was the stable one, the calm one, the reasonable man who didn't cause drama. But maybe that was the problem. I didn't yell, but I also didn't ask, "How are you?" Really, I didn't lie. But I also didn't tell her the truth about how disconnected I felt. I didn't cheat. But I also didn't choose her, not fully, not consistently. And if love isn't chosen over and over again, every day, through the hard parts, does it even survive? After she left, I became obsessed with understanding what went wrong, not just between us, but in so many marriages I'd seen fall apart around me. I started reading, listening, watching other couples, noticing what the good ones did differently. And I began to see the pattern. It's not infidelity. It's not money. It's not sex. It's disconnection. Tiny, daily disconnections that slowly turn two people into strangers. You stop sharing the little things. You stop celebrating the small wins. You stop asking questions that go beyond the surface. Until one day, you're just roommates with shared responsibilities and separate lives. I talked to a friend who had been married for 27 years. I asked him how they kept it together. He said, "We don't always get along. We don't always agree. But we never stop checking in." That phrase hit me. We never stop checking in, not just with each other, but with themselves, asking, "Am I still here? Am I still trying? Am I still seeing this person for who they are? Not who they used to be." I never asked those things. I just assumed we were fine because we weren't falling apart. But not falling apart is not the same as staying together. If you're still in your marriage right now, don't wait for silence to scream louder than words. Don't assume that peace means connection. Sometimes, peace is just two people who gave up at the same time. And if you've already lost her, don't rush to replace her. Sit with it. Ask yourself what you missed, and what you're finally willing to see, because healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering differently. I used to blame her for not trying harder, for giving up, for not telling me how far she had drifted. But the truth is, she did, in 1,000 small ways. Her eyes, her tone, her silence, her absence in conversations. She was trying to show me, and I wasn't looking. So now, I look at myself, at others, at what love really asks of a man who wants to keep it. Love is not grand gestures. It's not flowers after a fight, or vacations to reset. It's the boring stuff. The daily presence, the listening when you're tired, the asking even when you think you already know the answer, the choosing especially when it's inconvenient. And no one taught us that. They taught us how to chase, not how to stay. They taught us how to apologize, but not how to truly repair. They taught us how to provide, but not how to be present. So now I move differently. Not for her, not to prove anything, but because I don't want to live blind anymore. I say I hear you instead of, "You're overreacting." I ask, "What do you need?" instead of guessing. I make space for hard conversations, and I sit in the discomfort without trying to end it too fast. Because maybe what broke my marriage wasn't what I did wrong. It was what I never did at all. I don't tell this story to get her back. I don't tell it to make anyone feel guilty. I tell it because I wish someone had told me earlier that love fades by accident and survives by choice. That disconnection isn't loud, but it is lethal. That the opposite of cheating isn't loyalty, it's presence. And I wasn't present. So if you're listening and you're still married, still waking up next to someone you once chose, choose them again, and again, and again. Not because you have to, but because connection isn't automatic. It's earned and re-earned. And if it's already too late for that, then let this be the last time you love blindly. Let it be the last time you drift without noticing. Let it be the story that wakes you up before you fade from someone else's life, the way I faded from hers. Because in the end, we don't lose people when they walk away. We lose them when we stop showing up, long before the door ever closes.